Welcome to Relationships as Spiritual Practice, Bridging the Secular and Spiritual. With your host, Alia Lowe Chardet, founder of Mindful Compassionate Dialogue and the Wise Heart Community.
Hello, thank you for being here today. I appreciate your practice and your willingness to show up. Today, I want to share with you an answer I recently gave a student of mine when they asked how I've worked with reactivity over the long term, how those practices might look for intervening with reactivity and loosening its hold on you over time. So it'll be kind of short today. I imagine we're going to touch on 4 points. And the 4 points will be talking about recording and tracking, and then talking about sharing your experience, and then the expansive perspective, and then a little bit on anchoring. So for me, being able to see something clearly and then interrupt it is greatly helped by knowing it intimately. One strategy for knowing an experience intimately is to write it down, or if you don't like to write, you could make an audio recording, or maybe a pictorial representation. But to have that experience recorded somehow. And of course, it's so important that when you're doing this recording for yourself, that you start with self-compassion so that the recording isn't generating more reactivity through self-criticism. So you want to find that place in yourself. There's many guided meditations on self-compassion. I'm sure that you could find. Finding one that you like, or finding a few that you like, and beginning your session of recording with that self-compassion meditation. And when you record your experience, you can be more thorough by having a checklist of categories of experience, which could include at least the following: body sensations, posture, emotions, thoughts, beliefs, the types of decisions you are making in general or you made at the peak of the reactivity, the quality of your energy. Is it kind of sharp and chaotic? Does it move a certain direction? Is it tight and pulled inward? Is it heavy? And any habits that are associated with this reactivity. They could be habits like chewing a fingernail, eating sweets, sleeping more than you usually do, or overworking, getting over-industrious. What habits are associated with this pattern? And then the next piece to record is the conditions. So one perspective on how we manifest, that's not the word I exactly want, but how do things arise in us? How do things arise and then become behaviors, is what I'm trying to say. And so, of course, one is beliefs, internal beliefs direct our behavior a lot. Conditioning, right? All the habit energy from global, communal, familial conditioning. Your own spirit, guidance from the spirit realm, wisdom, and maybe your own will when you have access to agency and choice. And one that's often, you probably recognize all those, but one that's often overlooked, I think, is conditions. So I want to just talk about conditions. So there can be supportive and unsupportive conditions relative to who you would like to be in your life, the decisions you want to make, and how you respond to life. Often when reactivity takes over, you can look back and find and name the unsupportive conditions. And so they can be, I like to think about conditions both in the moment and over a period of time. So, for example, if you're in a stuffy room with no outdoor light, with an irritating fan or other kind of mechanical noise in the background, on a hard, uncomfortable chair, right? These could be unsupportive conditions in the moment that begin to dysregulate your physiology, making you more vulnerable to reactive patterns that you have practiced in the past. And then you can also look at conditions over a series of days, right? Like a lack of sleep, moving out of balance, neglecting certain needs in favor of others, not doing your regular grounding practices, right? All those kinds of things can be over a series of days. We want to add needs to the categories of experience, right? When you record your reactivity, you're looking for the underlying need that you believed was threatened in the moment. So using that feelings and needs list when you do this recording. Okay. So just to repeat before we move on, when I really worked hard with reactivity, I journaled every day because there was always some reactivity during the day. So I recommend a daily practice. And at the very least, a practice of noting to yourself, ooh, I got reactive there. I'm going to record that in the next possible opportunity. And then when you go to record that, you're looking at the categories of experience and the conditions that help to give rise to that reactivity. Okay, let's look at the next piece, share your experience. It is so hard to see yourself by yourself. Even when you look in a mirror, right? We know that's a distorted image. Mirrors aren't 100% accurate. Only the people around you actually have any sense of what you look like, and they still have their own filters, right? So it's so important that you have a regular person that you're sharing the experience of talking about your reactivity with. At whatever level is useful for you. Maybe you're sharing what you wrote down or what you recorded about most recent reactivity. Or maybe it's a therapist and you're diving into the limiting beliefs that go with that reactivity, or you're doing some trauma therapy and working with the body relative to that reactivity. What does the body need to release? Or you have a spiritual mentor that can hear you, receive you, offer compassion and empathy, and remind you that you are not your reactivity, and returns you to that sense of, or helps you return to that sense of resilience in the face of that. So important that you have a practice buddy, mentor, guide, therapist, so that someone else is holding this with you, right? You don't want to be holding that alone. Okay. So the third one we'll look at is to frequently return to the expansive perspective throughout the day. Frequently return to the expansive perspective. So most of you listening probably have already heard me talk about the expansive perspective, but just in case you're new, I'll just say a few words about what I'm referring to when I use that term. Taking the expansive perspective means almost like we're zooming out and seeing the bigger picture of our life. It can be literally looking around. If you have access to looking at the sky, literally expanding your field of vision is really helpful. And as you expand your perspective and track the bigger picture of your life, things begin to fall into place. And they don't take up an inordinate amount of space in your consciousness. They live relative to what's most important to you and find their size, so to speak. So in an expansive perspective, then, you have access to the big picture of your life, which may include more than your human life, may include your spiritual life. And you also have access to the skills and tools that you've been cultivating, the practices that keep you grounded or help you regulate. Accessing the expansive perspective doesn't mean a reactive state goes away. It just means that you become bigger around it and see it for what it is. And when you do that, it naturally loosens its hold on you. You believe in it less. You see it more and more as just, a phenomena. A phenomena that arises based on endless karma, right? Just arising, it's not who you are. So I want to just say a few words about accessing the expansive perspective throughout the day and some ways you might do this. So first of all, it's really important to experiment with many ways to do this, because you probably already do it. You probably already have many ways you ground yourself, find the big picture, zoom out, expand. So just name a few of those for yourself now, internally. Okay. So you named a few of those. I can tell you that my most powerful return to the expansive perspective right now in my life is gratitude. Gratitude is so reliable. I think because it's so concrete, right? I can just look around me at any moment, or even feel my body or some aspect of my experience and feel gratitude. So it's a pretty quick access point for me. You can experiment with that one. If you choose gratitude, you might also develop a go-to. like something that when you think of it, the gratitude comes quick, right? Often that's going to be something real simple. I think of one of my chickens right now. She's so sweet. She comes, sits on my lap, right? It's just a simple relationship, and just a lot of gratitude arises very easily there. So find what that is for you. Other expansive practices include looking at the sky or the trees, nature, focusing on someone or some being that you love, a pet, an area of nature. Doing a quick list in your mind of 10 things you're grateful for. Just getting in the habit so that you can do it quickly and easily, and there's a fluency in that. A particular kind of stretching or breathing or moving could help get you into the expansive perspective. And lastly, any particular activity, right? Like taking a shower, doing art, playing with a pet, exercising, dancing, even if it's for one song, just doing a little dancing or movement, qigong, shaking, saying a prayer, singing. Singing, such a powerful heart opening. Okay. And so with accessing the expansive perspective throughout the day, what's happening is that you're feeding and strengthening this part of you that knows how to access the expansive perspective. So it's just like anything, it requires practice for access. And so as you do that throughout the day, increasing that access, you also increase the probability that you'll be able to access it in reactivity, which is, of course, the most difficult time and the most essential time to access the expansive perspective. So it's really important, if you want to access the expansive perspective throughout the day, that you set your intention every day about how you will do that. I definitely do that. Every day I set my intention about what my specific practice will be. And I also set up a cueing system. Often that I'm very internal, so often I use internal cueing systems, such as noticing tension in my jaw or my forehead, or a particular kind of thinking is a cueing system. Particular kind of posture might cue me to return to my intention. If you're a more external person, then you might have an external cue, such as every time you go to the bathroom, or when you change activities, or if you go in and out of doors a lot, every time you go in or out, you set your intention. Or if you see a particular person or tree or object, could also be. Maybe you have a stone in your pocket, and every time you reach in your pocket and feel that stone, it reminds you to ground in your intention. So, so important to have that cue, to have your intention, and then have a cue. And often my intention will include something physical as a simple practice. So I might say, oh, my intention is gratitude. I'm specifically focusing on, and then you pick something, time with my dog to be grateful for example. And then I might have a practice like, and as I do that, I'm going to take an inhale in and a long exhale, focusing on the breath. That's a simple example. But it could be a smile, or putting your hand on your heart, or looking out the window, or closing your eyes. Something physical will help you ground in your intention a bit more. Okay. So we're at number 4, creating anchors. So I have other podcasts and certainly Connection Gems talking about anchors, and you can look those up. Basically, an anchor, when I use the word anchor, I'm talking about something that really creates easy access to the expansive perspective. We've talked about a few things in just a moment ago. An anchor is especially useful when you're really struggling with access. So an anchor includes, I like to say, at least 3 modalities: a physical action, a visual element, a verbal element, or an energetic element. One of those 3, one of those 4. And an anchor that is especially powerful with reactivity is one that addresses the most prominent need behind the reactive pattern. So when you get reactive, it's because you're misperceiving a threat to a particular need. And once you start recording your reactivity, you'll start to notice, oh, you probably run mostly just 2 or 3 types of reactivity. And basically, every time you run that reactive pattern, it's the same constellation of experiences. They might be at different volumes or such, but it's basically the same. So that's good news, because that means you can get to know it quickly and you can be confident with your intervention. So once you've identified the most prominent need behind a reactive pattern, then you can create an anchor specifically around that need. So, for example, if you know that emotional security is very tender for you in particular relationships, right? It's a tender need. Then you could create an anchor around security by finding a peak experience of security, a very specific moment when you really knew you were loved and cared for, held in the heart of someone else. So you're looking for that. And then when you find that experience, it doesn't matter if you still know that person, how long the experience was. Nothing else matters but the felt sense of, I'm secure. I'm emotionally secure in this relationship. And when you find that, you want to find those 3 anchor points to get yourself back to that experience. So you do that by absorbing yourself in the experience, staying there as long as you can, noticing everything about it: quality of light, sounds, words, shapes, the felt sense, anything at all you can notice, and then noticing everything inside of you about that experience: how you held your body, the exact feeling, how your energy was, what you believed. Any images come, or if any words come as you revisit that experience, note those. And then from all those things you examined and maybe even wrote down, you choose 3 concrete ways to return to that experience. It might be a powerful image or a powerful word, or it might be a movement or a gesture that you did at that moment, or that just cues that experience. And so when you invoke your anchor through those three things, whatever they are, you again immerse yourself in that experience of the met need. You immerse yourself in the experience of the met need, waiting for the expansive perspective to come on board. Remembering that the reactivity isn't going to go away. All that's going to happen is it's going to find its place in the field of your consciousness as one of many experiences in the present moment, rather than the experience. That's what we're looking for. So there's a bigger you that starts to observe. In the expansive perspective, there's a very grounded witness present also. So you stay with your anchor. Often the shift into the expansive experience feels like a boof, like a grounding, like a sort of dropping sensation, because reactivity is often swirling up your body. So you feel that shift. Oof. Often is shifting into the expansive perspective is also accompanied by curiosity, by noticing something about the situation that you didn't and couldn't notice before, right? By the impulse to take a new action, by compassion, warmth. All these things are a sign that you're entering the expansive perspective. So you want to stay deeply immersed in the anchor experience until you notice those things. And when you can engage this anchor earlier and earlier and earlier in moments of reactivity, that reactivity has less chance to be fueled by you just experiencing it again, like rehearsing the script of it, right? Every time you rehearse the script of reactivity, it gets stronger. When your reactive thoughts form words, it gets stronger. It's not that we don't want to talk about our reactivity. That's a different thing. Okay. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope it's been helpful. I'll just go back over the 4 things briefly to summarize. 4 long-term strategies to interrupt reactivity that we named are: record and track the experience with self-compassion. Share your experience with someone else who is willing to help you hold your intention to heal and dissolve this reactivity. Frequently return to the expansive perspective throughout the day by setting your intention and by having a cue to remind you of your intention for practice throughout the day. And lastly, to create an anchor that is formed out of an experience of the met need, the same need that's present in a reactive pattern. So eventually you'll have an anchor for every reactive pattern that you've recorded. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much for your practice. I deeply appreciate your practice and your commitment to the evolution of your heart. Radiating love from my heart to yours.
You can learn more about mindful, compassionate dialogue and find free resources, live offerings, and self-paced workshops online at www.wiseheartcommunity.org.